sunishchitam. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, on the one hand you advocate renunciation of action, and on the other hand you advocate yoga. Tell me with certainty which of the two is better." Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyasa Karma Yogascha Nisheshasa Karma Ubho Kayostu Karma Sannyasa Karma Yogo Vishishyate.
The Lord of Sri said, both renunciation of action and selfless action lead to ultimate happiness. However, of the two, selfless action is better than the renunciation of action.
Yeya sa nitya sannyasi yo na dvesheti na kamshati nidvanto hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate.
A person who is free from both hatred and desire is always renounced. Being indifferent to duality is enlightened on and is easily free from bondage and clean separation.
Sankhya yoga pratak bala pravadanti na pandita ekam apyaschita samyag uvayor vindate phalam.
Childish persons, not the learned, declare that contemplative life and selfless action are separate. One who practices either of these correctly achieves the same result.
These things as they are. Sannyasastho mahabaho dukam aptum ayogata yogayukto munir brahma nachirin gacchati.
However, renunciation of action without yoga Arjuna is difficult. Sage who is practiced in yoga, however, quickly attains the absolute.
Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriya sarva bhutma bhutatma kurvan api nalipyate.
Engaged in yoga, one whose intelligence is purified, whose mind is controlled, and whose senses are conquered, and who has identified with the self of all beings, is not implicated even in action.
Naiva kinchit karomo niti yukto manye tattvavit pashan shinvan pashan jigran ashnan gachan svapam svashan pralapan vishrajan glinan unmishan nimishan api indriyan indriyarteshu vartanta iti dharayan.
A person who is steadfast in yoga and knows as they are should think, I am not doing anything, even while I am seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, walking, sleeping, breathing, talking, evacuating, accepting things, and blinking my eyes. Rather, it is alone that are acting in relation to the sense objects.
Brahmanya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti ya lipyate nase papena padma patram ivan pasha.
One who works without attachment, striving his actions to go on, is not tainted by evil, just as a lotus leaf is untouched by water.
Sayenam bhujya kevaler indiyar api yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyaktvatma sudhaye. Karma yogis act with the body, mind, intellect, and even senses solely for the purpose of purification, having renounced attachment. Yukta karma palam tyaktva shantim apnoti naishtikim ayukta kamakamena pale sokto nibhadyate.
A person disciplined in karma yoga, having renounced the fruit of action, attains lasting peace. A person who does not practice karma yoga remains attached to the fruit of and is entangled by his actions.
Sarva karmani manasa sanyasyaste sukham vasi navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvan karayan.
Mentally renouncing all actions, one happily resides with self-control in the city of 9 gates, neither causing action.
Na kartavam na karmani lokasya srijati na karma palasayogam svabhavastu pravartate. The Lord creates neither a person's agency of action, nor his actions, nor the result. All this is done by a person's conditioned nature. Nadate kasyachit papam chaiva sukritam vibhu ajnanena virtam jnanam tena muhyanti janatantava.
Godhead does not accept responsibility for anyone's good or evil deeds. Beings are deluded because their knowledge is covered by ignorance.
Jnanena tutarajnanam yesham nashitam atmana tesham adi
Bodhito Bodhodai Pushpamanto Chitro Sambhutamanuno Vandeham Shri Ramakrishno Abhayat Charano Sago Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subalapriyo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Gauri Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai Shri Shri Dhari Gopal Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai Ekadasi Vrata Ki Jai Gita Jayanti Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Go Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Go Premananda. So good morning. Today we gather on to commemorate the Gita Jayanti, speaking of the Bhagavad Gita, a very significant event in human society. And we segue into that, given the day of Gita Jayanti today, from our discussions concerning Sakirasa. And as it would have it, the two are easy to tie together, if you will. So we will try to do that, and that means to say continue our discussion about Sakirasa, and in the context of that, also bring to light some of the glories of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is also known as Gita Upanishad. The Upanishads are thought to be sounds that are embedded in nature, so to speak, like mathematical formulas are thought to be embedded in in nature and discovered by mathematicians. That's one school of mathematics, one we would tend to agree with. So similar to that idea, the embedding of sounds, mantras, drawn upon by Brahma at the dawn of creation, by which to bring about the secondary creation and so on and so forth, and also from the Vedic mantras, the sounds that means they're not authored. So they're not authored means they're thought to originate from God, be non-different from God, be an expression of the Godhead himself, the Veda. So the Gita is, and amongst the Veda, the Upanishads is the later section that deals with the sounds about Brahman, about Atma, about God and the self, right? And so the Gita is sometimes referred to as Gita Upanishad. Why? Because it's thought to have been spoken by God, by Krishna himself. We can draw from the Veda, the Upanishads, that with the Gaudiya lens, that Krishna is the Godhead. It can be supported from the Veda, right? And of course, the Veda is the Shruti. Follow that as the Smriti. Smriti is authored by humans, reflecting on the Shruti and explaining it, breaking it down, making it more accessible, and so forth. And among such texts, Puranas, for example, we find the Bhagavatam, right? So this is a little bit of how we at least a form of the Godhead, if not the fountainhead of all forms of divinity. Mahabharata, for example, and of course the Gita is a chapter of the Mahabharata, a historical of sorts, itihasa type of narrative, the Mahabharata, and the Gita is found in there in a very special place, right? In the context of romance and politics and intrigue of the Mahabharata, the prospect of a war arises, and while there's an effort to solve the problem with diplomacy, all breaks down, and the war is and the readers are on the edge of their seats at this point. They've got full attention now. This is the climax of the whole, what's been building up for chapter after chapter after chapter. And the war is going to take place, and just put on the brake for 1 minute while everybody is, like I say, on the edge of their seat. And Krishna speaks to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, right? And he takes it to another level. Right? He takes it beyond the level of the advocacy of morality and just righteous living and so forth. It's central to the Mahabharata, to that which we are beyond the limits of our humanity, the Atma. And it's oneness with Brahman, and he identifies himself as the supreme Brahman, and so on and so forth. So he is the speaker of the Gita. He's God. So the Gita is sometimes referred to as the Upanishad, another Upanishad. Right? Upanishad means sit near. Upanishad, sit near, so that I can tell you something. The implication is that is not it's not typically on the waves. It's not on the television. It's not, well, internet, I guess it's not prominent. It's not prominent in human discourse. Human discourse, humans are preoccupied with something other than the secret message of the Gita, the secrets about yourself, the inner life. It's preoccupied with the outer life, the outer world, right? So, Gita Upanishad. And today again we celebrate the speaking of the Gita. It's said to have been spoken really by way of what you might call distant viewing. Distant viewing is a form of paranormal experience that some psychics have, where they can view an event at a distance and report on it. At Stanford University some years ago in Palo Alto, the U.S. Military employed a number of these mystics with this ability in order to learn things or come up with strategies and so forth and so on. So, what is his name? The speaker of the Gita? Sanjay. So we get Jai, victory over everything, means over the senses, over the mind. And he heard and saw and witnessed the sacred conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, and reported it to Dhritarashtra. He must have wrote it down, taken notes, wrote it down. So, very special text. And relative to our broader discussion, Sakiras, it's notable that while bhakti is central to the Gita, there are two schools of thought basically on the Gita. It's monistic, it's theistic. You have the Gyanis, it's about knowledge, and you have the devotees, it's about bhakti. If it's about bhakti, there must be Bhagwan. So theism versus monism. Of course, the Gita lends itself to many other explanations as well. There are political commentaries on the Gita. I guess you could say Gandhi had a bit of a political perspective on the Gita. There's psychological ones. It's been used for many things. I said before that when I was young, I used to think, well, those were all unbona fide editions of the Gita. It's beauty. That it can speak to so many people on so many levels, and be pertinent. But with regard to the two schools of Vedanta, if you will, the Gyanis and the Bhaktas, well, this is an ongoing debate. I don't really think that the Gyanis have much of a case to make with some of the very bold statements from Krishna. Like, everything rests upon me as pearls upon a thread. No one can get out of it without me, without my blessing. Surrender to me. They have to add a little something in there. It's not to Krishna within the surrender, but they want to interpret what he says to speak. This is a kind of thing that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj is very strident against the Mayavad perspective or Advaita Vedanta, because very much involved in establishing a school of Vedanta in a spoken vernacular in Bengal, into Bengals, and Advaita Vedanta had has still does, but then more so had a large hold on the people as to this is what Vedanta is, right? Other schools came and argued, Madhva, Ramanuja, and so on and so forth. But their influence is probably more prominent in the South. So at any rate, he takes a very strong position there. So you can find statements like this, Vyaspranta. when he begins the narrative of the Chaitanya Charitamrita Krishnadas Kaviraj in the 7th chapter, after his whole long sacred introduction, where does he begin the narrative? In a rather odd place. He begins the narrative rather than beginning with the birth of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He begins Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Paris, going to Vrindavan. And there he has a debate with the Prakashananda Saraswati and the Gyanis. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, more or less, Krishnadas is saying, we want to go to where this book is taking us, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to take us, to the land of Braj, of this Mayavad. Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatadesha Tarane. Prabhupada depicted himself as such. Very, very much for it doesn't sound very rasic, but it's destroying Mayavad. But it's essential to entering into what is actually Rasananda. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was criticized by Prakashananda. He called him a babuka. Of course, this is the word we find in the introduction to the Bhagavatam itself. Nigama kopataro galitam sukumukadamata trabas pibata rasamalayam muhuraho rasika babu bubi babuka. Here, as Prakashananda used it, seems like he's supposed to be a sannyasi, which in Prakashananda's Gyan perspective was a very dry person. Logic, not at all moved emotionally, not engaged in emotional activities. What to speak of singing and dancing in public? And this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was from the Bhakti school. He had taken sannyas, and here he's singing and dancing in the public. He seems not nice enough, but he seems a little confused. So he was invited, right, to the assembly. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted them. So in the context of speaking about this, Krishnadas Goswami, Raj Goswami says, as he explains how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted Prakashananda and his followers, he explains how Vyas says this in the Vedanta Sutra, and Shankara says, no, it's not that, it's this. And the word he uses is Vyas Branta. If we listen to your commentary, referring to your Acharya's commentary, Shankar, then what does his commentary say? What is the essence of the commentary of Shankar? This is very strident what he says here. No, what is it? I don't know. What? You tell me. Krishna says, Vyas Branta. Vyas doesn't know what he's talking about. That's Shankar's commentary. I'm here to tell you what it really meant, what it really means. What it says on its face, that's not what it means. It means Vyasa is crazy. This is what Shankar's commentary comes down to. This is very strong language on the part of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Right? And we, while we are generous, I should say, compared to other Vaishnavas, in that we accept there's what we call Brahma Sayuja, a merging of the Atma with Brahman. It's not even acknowledged in Sri Vaishnavism or Madhva school. They have a different interpretation of the word Sayuja. Sayuja, as Baladev Vidibhusan, drawing from the Madhva school, says in his commentary on Vedanta Sutra, Sayuja means the oneness that we were talking about earlier, that one must have with Bhagavan, which is the basis of all other forms of liberation, oneness in spirit. We're generous in relation to Advaita Vedanta by saying, yeah, there's a kind of a merging that's possible with Brahman. We call that Brahman the effulgence of Krishna. But where we disagree is the Atma actually exists as an individual. It's not, as Shankar teaches, there's only one soul and it's Brahman. And we think we're individuals because we're like air, sky, inside of a clay pot. break the clay pot, we're sky. And there's no individual skies. This is his teaching, right? No self. No self. Or Brahman is the only self. This is the direction that the philosophical and scientific community will go in. They have to go through this practically to get to what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was talking about. They question if there's a self at all because self is subjective, and they think the world is only made up of physical, prominent perspective forces. So this consciousness, this individual self, it's just an illusion. If we look carefully, we can reduce down to just something that goes on in the brain. Is their idea, right? So they have a no self idea. Advaita Vedanta comes and says, we agree with you. There's no self, no individual self. But we don't agree that consciousness is reducible. And you're having a hard time reducing it. You're having a hard time proving your thesis that consciousness is material, ultimately, physical. There's no supernatural. There's no life after death or only physical forces. There's no ultimate real meaning or purpose to life. This is materialism as a philosophy. So Advaita Vedanta says, yes, there's no self, but consciousness, you've got that wrong. It's underlying. It underlies everything. Everything exists within consciousness. And you are consciousness. But we agree, you're not an individual. That's an illusion. And Gaudiya Vedanta comes along and says, well, let's take it a step further here. If you're everything, how'd you get in the pot? in the clay pot? You'd be confused that you're everything. How did Brahman, a part of Brahman, become confused that it's Brahman? I'm giving a simplistic argument. There are much more developed philosophical arguments to refute the idea, but and it posits its Gaudiya Vaishnavism position that there is a self, and it's constituted of consciousness. It's like a point. In mathematics, you can make a point, but you can't measure it. The self is something like that. It's immeasurable in a small way, I guess you could say, as the Gita says, the Bhagavad says, Puranas say. So, at any rate, the Bhagavad Gita, these are the two competing schools, but ours is a theistic school. We acknowledge as an individual self, and Krishna speaks about that individual self in the first 6 chapters, more than anything else. But the first time that he actually uses the word bhakti, it comes in the 4th chapter. In the 2nd chapter, he says something, and if we look at it carefully, we know he's talking about bhakti. He says, what is that verse? 39th verse, the 2nd chapter. No, that's the 4th chapter, 2nd chapter. He says, he starts talking about yoga. He's talked about Sankhya, about the self. Now he talks about how to realize that self, yoga. He says, this is never lost. Pratyavayana vidyate, swalpamapi asya dharmasya trayate mato bhayat. This, what I'm teaching about now, yoga, it is enduring. And a little participation in it is never lost. Now, he's talking about bhakti here without saying it. How is that so? Because anything that we do and anything that we acquire as a result of our actions in this world is not enduring, right? It's here today and it will be gone tomorrow. Whatever we acquire, well, it will pass through our hands, at least at death, right? Things come, things go. He's talking about something that once begun, whatever progress one, it's not lost. So this cannot be something that's under the governance or the influence of the gunas, tamaguna, rajaguna, sattvaguna. And there are forms of yoga that are governed by rajaguna, or karma, let's say, as a path, is governed by the rajaguna. Yoga as a path, or gyan, are governed by the sattvaguna. So if he's talking about something that's permanent, then it must be nirguna. So when he begins to speak about yoga, this is the beginning of the middle of the second chapter. There's a long discourse about yoga that ends where? At the end of the 6th chapter, right? And in his very beginning, if we look at it carefully, he's saying, the yoga that I'm ultimately going to teach you about is a yoga that's governed by the nirguna, movement in the nirguna, in the transcendent. So this is bhakti. Of course, at the end of the 6th chapter, at the end of his discourse, he says, what? Yoginam api sarvesham madgate antaratmana shadhavan bhajate yomam same yuktamato mata. He says, of all the better than a yogi is my devotee, right? He begins his discourse on yoga with reference to bhakti, and he ends it with a reference to bhakti. Then we go into the second 6 chapters of the Gita, where he talks about what? Himself, the object of bhakti. He wants to talk about the self. He wants to talk about how to realize the self through yoga. And a way of realizing the self through yoga that sheds light not fully on the self, not just that the self is different from the body, and different from the individuality that the body and mind create, but that the self is also inherently a servant by nature of Bhagwan himself, right? So the second 6 chapters, all about himself. Some people have a little hard time with that. This guy's a little self-centered here, But really, Krishna is only talking about bhakti overtly, second 6 chapters, and because he's talking about the beauty of bhakti, well, he has to talk about himself. It's the object of bhakti. Bhakti, you have to have the bhakta, and you have to have Bhagwan. You have to have the love, and you have to have the object of love, right? So he has to talk about himself, and you're going to talk about bhakti. And Krishna loves bhakti. Krishna loves his devotee. That's what pleases Krishna, is the pleasure of his devotees. That's what makes him tick. Everything about him. Their pleasure is his pleasure. He loves them. So there's many ways in which we can make the case strongly, and Gita really helps us in this regard, that it's a theistic text. And it really is speaking about theistic Vedanta. And a doctrine of love rather than a doctrine of knowledge. If you want to call it a doctrine of knowledge, as I said the other day, well, what does the Gita say is the king of knowledge? Manmano bhakto. Become my devotee, that's the king of knowledge. Do these simple things. Namaskar, Sankirtan Yagya, he says. Manmano bhakto ji, that's Sankirtan, Yaji. Seva puja, namaskar. These are simple things to do, the activities themselves. And Krishna says that again at the end of the Gita. Again he says, Manmano bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mamnoskulu. He emphasizes his love for devotees, that he loves them so much. That this should then inspire them and instill confidence in them that these simple practices have efficacy. Because you might think, well, geez, this all I have to do? To lay on a bed of nails and go live in the Himalayas, live in a cave. It's difficult compared to like cooking matar paneer and rice, and making a nice offering, and tasting the remnants and so forth, and flowers and dress and so on. Things that you would otherwise be attracted to doing for the pleasure of your own senses, and for the pleasure of his senses, and it pleases our senses, purifies our heart, and so forth. So it's so comparatively easy that one may think, I don't know, is it that all there is to it? Is it that simple? So he says at the end of the Gita, believe me, Arjuna, I love you. My love for my devotees is my solemn pledge. You do these things, and be assured you will attain success. So anyway, there's a number of ways. I'm just mentioning a few that we can make as we do Gaudiya Vaishnavas, a theistic case for the Gita, as other Vaishnava Sampradayas do as well. But relative to our broader topic, Sakhya-rasa, we find the first time that the word bhakti is actually employed by Krishna in the Gita comes in the 4th chapter. There he says, he's speaking about avatar tattva. This is a little bit of this is just a little small section at the beginning of the 4th chapter, which is kind of a precursor or a preview of what the second 6 chapters are all about. Because he's talking directly about himself. And I appear in the world. I've done it before. You were there, Arjuna. I was there. You forget. I don't forget. I have these teachings that I invest in the world, and I invest energy in them. If somehow they get distorted, again I come. Sakalena mahata yoganashta parantapa evam parampara praptam imam raja shayobidu. Just a short few verses there. Avatar tattva, big subject, right? One of the 10 subjects of the Bhagavatam. Yeah. Big subject. God coming within our purview, within our frame of reference, right? What will that be like? So he says a little bit about that, and it's there that he utters the word bhakti. Bhaktosi me sakacheti rahasya hi etad uttamam. And of course he's speaking to Arjuna, Pandava Arjuna. He says, Bhaktosi me sakacheti. Because you are a bhakta, because you do bhakti to me. Bhaktosi me sakha. And because you are my sakha, because you are my friend. Therefore, rahasya hi, I will tell you this rahasya, this supreme secret. Now, what do you think the supreme secret is? It's not that you're not the body. That's part of the whole thing. And we've been discussing that. That's part of it. Some people will stop there. This is the most secret thing. You're different from The secrets are there. Who gave us the Bhagavatam? Sukadev? Was it Sukadev? The form of the Bhagavatam that we have today, who gave it to us? Yes, Sukadev spoke to Parikshit Maharaj, that's true. But, Vyas wrote something, that's true. But he wrote about something that already happened. No. 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 I'll surprise you. He was a Saka. He was the full face of Sakiras, Baldev. Baldev removed Ramharshan when he went south, and he put Sutta Goswami on the asan. And Naimite Nimishatcheche Vishaya Sonaraya, the Bhagavatam begins. Sutta Goswami is speaking to the sages the truth of the Bhagavatam, the message of the Bhagavatam. He becomes the reciter of the essence of all the Puranas by Baladev himself. So we have the Bhagavatam, and it comes from Saka. We have the Gita, and it's Rahasyam. It comes from Saka. If Arjuna was not a Saka, a Bhakta, and a Saka, we could argue, then he might not have told him such secrets. What kind of secrets then? Deep secrets of the Bhagavatam that are brought out in the Chaitanya Sampradaya. And who's bringing them out? Well, Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? Chaitanya Bhagavat. There we find it in literature, right? And who gave us the Chaitanya Charitamrita? And who gave us the Chaitanya Bhagavat? With regard to the latter, what did you say? Yeah. Nityanandaram. Nityanandaram. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Krishna Vrindavan Das Thakur, the author says, Antaryami, the indwelling soul of my heart is Nityananda Prabhu, and he told me to write this book. Nityananda Prabhu Vijay. Krishnadas Kaviraj found that in his brother's house where he was residing, there was disrespect for Nityananda Prabhu. So he left the house, became a homeless person without a second thought. When he saw disrespect for Miniketana Ramdas, who was an extension of Nityananda himself, he left the house. And what happened? As he slept on the roadside somewhere, Nityananda Prabhu came to him in a dream with his associates, all dressed like sakas from Vrindavan, with horns and flutes and turbans and dancing and colorfully chanting and so forth. Ram Ram Mahabaho, Ram Ram Mahabaho. Nityananda Prabhu told him, you go to Vrindavan, there all your desires will be fulfilled. Arko Benitai Chand Karuna, Oive Sangsara Vasana, more Kabe Tucha Habe. Arko Benitai Chand, as Narottam prays. We got to get the permission of Nityananda Prabhu to enter Vrindavan. What else does he say? He says, Keno Vina Nitai Bhai, Radha Krishna, Hoibe Nai. There's no rasa. There's no Braj rasa without Nityananda Prabhu. This is a Manjari saying this. Narottam Thakur. Without Nityananda Prabhu, there's no Braj rasa whatsoever. Does he have any, does Sakya rasa have any role in Gaudiya Vaishnavism? Can we try to take the Sakya rasa out of Nityananda Prabhu and render him some other way? Others have tried, but this is not the Goswami's teachings. No. This is not the orthodox teachings of the Goswamis. And it's very loudly, that teaching is very loudly echoed in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sankarshana Karnato Ishai, Gabulishai, Chapayogishai, Sheshasta Yasyamsa Salakanita, Nanda Kirama, Sharanamamatsu, 4 or 5 verses like, who is Nityananda Prabhu? He's all these things. He is the the Kshirodaksha Vishnu, the Garbhodaksha Vishnu, the Mahavishnu, the Mahasankarshan, the Mool Sankarshan. All these are partial manifestations of he who is Balaram. The Charitamrita, and what happened? Vrindavan Das went to Vrindavan, and there he was given the task of writing the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Madan Mohan. He wouldn't have been there without Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda Prabhu didn't send him there for no reason whatsoever. Go there, get the association of Rup, Sanatan, Jiva Goswami, and this is the implication of what Nityananda Prabhu told him. And then distill all those teachings and repeat them in Bengali for the larger public in the context of a narrative about the life of my other self, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, something like this. So the secrets of the Bhagavatam that are brought out by the Gaudiyas, and particularly largely in these two texts, this is coming from Baladev. Now, the seminal book of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, of course, is Brihad Bhagavatamrita, not Chaitanya Charitamrita, not Chaitanya Bhagavat, that was written by Sanatana Goswami. Amrita is the nectar essence of the Bhagavatam. If you take the Bhagavatam, it's a long, long book, 18,000 verses, and complicated. Let's just distill it down. What's the essence? It was spoken by Sukadev to Parikshit, which took 7 days. His mother, Parikshit Maharaj's mother, Uttara, wondered what went on in that conversation. And one from her son, who now only had but a few minutes left, having been cursed to die in 7 days. The Bhagavatam discourse was over, and before he would die depart by the divine arrangement, she wanted to know, what did he say? So again, it was repeated. Sanatana says, this is Brihad Bhagavatamrita, condensed form, essence. Sanatana Prabhu has given us that, and he's given it in 2 cantos. First canto, second canto. First canto is about what is the highest ideal. And he goes through so many forms of bhakti, so many expressions of bhakti. And it ends what? In the Parakiya Bhav of the gopis. Uttara, hearing this, is stunned. She thinks, I'd like to be a gopi. Wow. But I have a doubt. Yes, Krishna appeared in the world, we know that, and he did so many things, but then he disappeared, and presumably he went back into Narayan in Vaikuntha. But in Vaikuntha, there's no gopi bhav. There's no gopis there. There's no sakas there. There's no moms and dads there of Narayan. There's only Dasya, Shanta. There's no place for that. So if this gopi bhav exists eternally as the highest ideal, there must be a place for it. And if it's not in Vaikuntha, where the heck could it be? Wow, this is a very insightful question, right? And so the second canto of the Bhagavatam, Goloka Mahatmya, the glories of Goloka. And he takes us then, the author, through all the different theistic possibilities, and we end up in Goloka, which is referred to in some Puranas, Jiva Goswami says, as the Mahavaikunta. This is very, very pertinent to our central theme in terms of Siddhanta, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. If Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, and you can have a relationship with him in transcendence forever, there must be a place. If Krishna is not Swayam Bhagavan, and he's an avatar of Narayan, then there's a place for Gopi Bhav, Sakya Bhav in the Prakat Leela, because Narayan does a peculiar thing, acts like a human, And then he goes back to his normal self, being God. And when you meet him in his homeland in Vaikuntha, well, he's God. And so this Sakya and Madhurya and Vatsalya, they're just kind of a something peculiar and special for a moment in the Prakat Lila. But they have no enduring possibilities, if you will. So Krishna better not be the source, better not be the avatar of Narayan, or otherwise we can't be his friend forever. Imagine how I can only be for a little while, and then we'll have to change. And we'll have to keep a distance, and have 4 arms and so forth. How can we live with that? Gaudias can't live with that. So they've given a good reasoning, good support, theological support for Goloka. And so this Goloka Mahatmya, it's all about the glories of Goloka. It takes us there and gives evidence from scripture as to its existence and so forth, right? Now, this is given to us by Sanatana Goswami. Okay, we had Sakyarasa's involved in giving us the Gita secrets. Sakyarasa's involved in giving us the Bhagavatam, Baladev, right? Nityananda Prabhu, Sakyarasa, involved in giving us Chaitanya Charitamrita, giving us Chaitanya Bhagavat, right? Really giving us Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. You know how powerful Nityananda Prabhu was? That he could say, what is that song? Bhaja Gauranga, Kaha Gauranga, Laha Gauranga Nam Re. Ye Jana Gauranga Bhaje Se Amar Pran Re. And they did it because he was who he was. He said, if you worship Gauranga, if you chant Gaur's name, if you follow his teachings, I will be purchased by that.
Excuse me, but there is no sound. There is.
Yeah, I think what's happening is their internet connection keeps going in and out, and so it looks like about a minute for it to come back on.
Yeah, but I think
it's on now. No.
Sorry?
Guru Maharaj is speaking. You can see him, but he's muted. Ah, there we go.
Baladev's doing it kind of discreetly, as we described, placing Sutta Goswami on the throne. Nityananda Prabhu was doing it overtly. In Chaitanya Bhagavat, Das Thakur says, Nityananda Prabhu gave Guru Bhav to the world. Not because he was in Gopi Bhav, because he gave Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the world. What are friends for, right? In Gaur Lila, Baladev in the form of Nityananda Prabhu can be fully participate in a particular dimension of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pursuit of Gopi Bhav. What is that dimension? Giving it out, paying attention to it, what it is, how virtuous it is, how glorious it is, how high it is, right? And in the seminal text of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, what do we find? We find these two cantos, right? We find the commentary of Sanatana Goswami. We sometimes say it's his book, he wrote it. But what do we find relative to our discussion? We find that in both the first and the second canto, it is through Sakyaras that the truth of those cantos that the author seeks to bring out are brought out. How's that? In the first canto, who is in Sakyarasa, as Rupa Goswami explains in Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, he ends up in Dwarka in his pursuit of the devotees who have the most mercy of Bhagavan. And there he brings up a topic to Krishna about Braj, and loses his external consciousness, and it's a huge scene, right? And it comes out there. What is his love for the gopis in Vrindavan? How it is more intense than his love for the queens, although that's perfect also, but more intense. It comes out. Everyone's startled. And Nard thinks, oh my God, I've caused a real disturbance. Krishna's like gone unconscious and people might be upset with me. And Krishna comes to, so to speak, and he says, don't think like that. Garopari Smitida Priyanam. This is the Mahavakya, great sound of the canto of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Gadopakari, Gadopa Upakari, the best Upakari, the best friend, the best helper, the best friend. Gadopakari Smriti Da Priyanam is who reminds one, Smriti, of his dearmost. And you've done that. You, Nard, who are the expansion of Madhu Mangal, the Brahman, the farcical Brahman of Vrindavan. Through you, the glory of the gopis' love has come out, and it's very pleasing to me. You reminded me of that here in Dwarka. Gadopakari Smriti Da Priyam. You are the best. That is the best friend. So through the medium, if you will, of Sakyaras, this comes out. Then we go to the second canto, Golok Mahatmya. Who is the protagonist in this? That is Gopakumar. What is he doing? Teaching his student Jana Sharma. What is he teaching? He's teaching about the gopis' love and the place, that realm. And what is his role there? He is the Priyanarmasaka. And Jana Sharma, in association of his guru, Gopakumar, Sarupa, he finds out. And I'm an Narmasaka also. Actually, Gopakumar tells Jana Sharma that Radharani, I was in the Apricot Leela. Radharani came to me and said, don't go cow herding today. There's a devotee of mine in Braj. I want you to go there and bring him here. And he thought, Sarupa, Gopakumar thought, if I follow her order, I won't be able to go cow herding with Krishna today. Bummer. But if I please Radharani, Krishna will be most pleased with me. I'm gone. I will forego the cow herding for the pleasure of Radharani. This is an Narmasaka. Yes, Sakya Bhav for Krishna, and he's a kinkar, a servant of Radharani. Right? So he comes and he enlightens Jana Sharma. And at the height of his enlightenment, what happens? Krishna manifests. He sees Jana Sharma. And Krishna takes off his own ornaments and puts them on him, begins to decorate him. And it shows so much love and affection for him. Very beautiful section. So point anyway is that So what is the role of Sakirasa in disseminating the Gopi Bhav that is central to Gaudiya Vaishnavas? In so many ways we find this. Let's go back to the Gita for a moment, right? Bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasihi etarutamam. That secret of the Gita. Later on in Gaur Leela, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we've written about in our commentary, wanted to check out and see, how well did Arjuna understand my instructions in the Gita? After all, we have to remember, if Krishna comes to the world himself, personally, not an avatar of himself, he's not going to be alone, because there's no, Krishna has to be with his associates. Right? They are the love that he is the object of. They correspond with him. So Krishna comes to the world as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then we look around. Where's Yasoda? Where's Nanda? Where's Radha? Where's Subal? How about Pandava Arjuna? He's pretty prominent. He is in Rupa Goswami's terminology, he is a Puri Sambandha, a friend Sambandha in the city, whereas the Gopas are friends in the country. It's more less sophisticated, more intimate of a setting there. But they're friends in the city, like Bhima, like Pandavarjuna, like Draupadi. They are in Sakirasa, a type of Sakirasa with Krishna. This is Arjuna, right? Where is he in Gaur Leela? Well, we don't have to look too far. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu broadly made the announcement that Maharaj Pandu is is it Bhavananda Roy, the father of the Pandava of 5 sons, of which Ramananda was one, is Pandava. Is Pandu, Maharaj Pandu, and his 5 sons are the 5 Pandavas, and amongst them, Ramananda Roy is Arjuna. Now, there are many different opinions about Ramananda Roy, but it's difficult to get around Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's own words. Ramananda Roy is Arjuna, right? And so forth. He thinks about it himself, and he comes up with it. Sometimes he makes suggestions. Could be this, could be this. Some say this, some say that. Right? So there are different ways to look at that. What he's seeing is, I'm seeing this kind of bhav, or others have said this bhav is, or this said, this is my bhav. And based on that bhava, that braj bhav, in that person, they identify that person with the bhava, right? So when he comes to Ramananda Roy, well, it's a complicated case, he says. There are a number of opinions that are out and about. So Ramananda Roy was the object of a lot of thought, apparently. Many people thought about, who is this guy? He was a government assistant, and from the Sudra Varna, worldly, and Sri Krishna Chaitanya, the young sannyasin, brought him back here and asked that he reside here and have full pension. Who is this guy? And meanwhile, he's teaching ladies who have no families, that have become wards of the temple, how to dance for the deity, Jagannath, an intimate setting without ever being disturbed by the relationship with ladies. He's beyond it. And he was a Rasika. I mean, who is he? What did Sarvabhauma say? Sarvabhauma said, I could never figure this guy out. I mean, and Sarvabhauma is the greatest law in all of India, all time. heavy thinker. And he had conversations with Ramananda Roy previous to meeting Mahaprabhu, and he confessed to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted him by his silence, and then the following discourse, and his very persona to becoming a devotee, emotional. When Mahaprabhu was going to go south to look for his brother, on the pretext of looking for his brother, Sarvabhauma acquiesced, you're Ishwar, you can do what you want. But one thing, let me say to you, if you go there, look up this fellow, Ramananda Roy. I'll tell you right now, I could never figure this guy out. What is he about? I mean, I'd have conversations with him. Now I know. You and him, you have something in common. You really have something in common. So your whole trip to the south will be victorious, will be virtuous, will be complete if you meet with him. And sure enough, Mahaprabhu met with him, and there they had the conversation, right? And in that conversation, what do we find? Krishna, in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, became the inquirer, like Arjuna is in the Gita, asking questions of Krishna. And in that conversation between Ramananda Roy and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Ramananda Roy, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became the inquirer, Ramananda Roy became the answerer. So the student took the position of the teacher, and the teacher took the position of the student. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, is testing Arjuna in the form of Ramananda Roy. What did you get out of that conversation we had a yuga ago? What do you think I was really saying there? What's the gist of it all? There's a lot of things said in the Gita. It says this. It seems to advocate different paths, some people think. If you took it all together, tied it all together, what does it say? What is it really emphasizing? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Krishna tested Arjuna, Ramananda Roy. And Ramananda Roy went so far, so deep in answering Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's question that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to cover his mouth. That is the rahasyam uttamam. You got it. Bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasya hi eto uttamam. You got the secret, the deepest secret. That can't be told everywhere. But I'm God. You might tell that everywhere. But then I'm hiding in the bushes, wondering if Radharani still loves me. That's another thing. Who's gonna understand that? It's Prabhupada used to say, everybody, all the religions except God is the most worshipable person, and we are teaching about the person that God worships. Radha. What is that? What kind of theology is that? Very peculiar, very interesting, very rich, nuanced, layered, as it should be. Spiritual life, right? So Ramananda Roy, Pandava Arjun of Gaur Leela. And in the context of Chaitanya Charitamrita, what an important book that it is, given to us in a broad sense, as I explained by Nityananda Prabhu, with the personification of Sakyaras, is given by Ramananda Roy in the sense that the conversation between Ramananda Roy and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is like what? Textually speaking, it's like the Bhagavad Gita in the Mahabharata. What the Bhagavad Gita is to the Mahabharata, the conversation between Ramananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Chaitanya Charitamrita is to Chaitanya Charitamrita. The essence of all the teachings there. So Arjuna learned this lesson well. So again, we have an example how through Shakyarasa, virtues of Gopi Bhav, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was all about, is given to the world. So Sakyarasa has some role to play. This is where we ended in our class yesterday. Sakyarasa has some role to play in the dissemination of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Tomorrow we'll go into how it has a role to play beyond the distribution in the result of pursuing the distribution, in the end, entering into the Gopi Bhav or Goloka. What is its role there in relation to Gopi Bhav. It has a role with regard to the dissemination of Gopi Bhav. We've made a good case for that. Explaining it, sharing it, and so forth, selflessly, without trying to shine a light on itself, doing this. But it's also, in my point, clearly with, has a role, a very, an undeniable and slightly. And it's a good question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question is about the rasic composition of Uddhava. Is he similar? Uddhava was a teacher, teaching Krishna. Is he a Saka, basically? You're asking. And his position is a little bit different, but interesting in this regard to what we have been speaking about. Who is it that Krishna sent to Vrindavan to pacify the residents there? It was Uddhava and Balaram, right? Later Balaram, to try to convey to them, I love you, I'm here, stuck here with these religious duties. I'm God, unfortunately, and I've got a job to do this, to establish Dharma and teach and so on and so forth. My heart is with you, believe me. I'll be back soon, right? Hold on, right? And in this way, of course, his leaving there, apparent leaving there, is showcasing the measure of their love to all of us, that we might understand it as the ideal, right? So the two servants that he sends back are Balaram and Uddhava. Uddhava did okay, kind of, but not very good. Uddhava, more than pacifying everybody and teaching them something, learned something. But after he learned something, then he wanted to teach it to the world, right? And he gave some beautiful verses in the Bhagavatam, speaking about the virtues of the gopis' love, the intensity of that love, right? And when it comes from Uddhava, well, you know, he knows what he's talking about. He was Krishna's advisor in Dwarka, but he learned something from the gopis. How much knowledge is inside Gopi Bhav? But Uddhava learned something from these village girls. It's beyond what you can find in the Upanishads overtly. So, Baladev, obviously, Sakyaras, he was sent. There's a reason for that. Sakyaras has a role in carrying the burden, not only of separation from Krishna themselves, but the burden of the other inhabitants of Vrindavan. We have the example in Mathura, before Uddhava was ever sent, friends of Krishna who came with Krishna, with Nanda Maharaj to Mathura. When he slayed Kamsa, he had to send them back, right? So he didn't tell Nanda, try to pacify everybody. He told his friends, Subal, Sridham, say this to my mother. Tell my mother this. She sees me like apparitions, like hallucinations. She's not sure if I'm there. Tell her, yesterday you cooked this and I ate it and it was delicious. I'm there. It seems like I'm not there, but I am there. I'm there in your love. Wherever your love is, I am there. She tried to pacify her in this way. And Subal, here's a letter. Give this to Radharani and the gopis. That was me last night. I was there. Try to pacify them in this way. You, in Sakiras, have the burden of separation from me. With it as well, you have the burden of carrying the separation of others in Vatsalya Dasya, and in Madhurya, and trying to pacify them. Special role in Sakirasa. I brought this out nicely in Circle of Friends. He said, and Soka Krishna, come here. You here, take some of these clothes of mine here and rub up against me so that my scent comes on you. And you go and sit, because cows, they understand my presence by the scent and so forth. And by them, and they'll know I'm there. Okay. So special role of Sakya. But Uddhava, the question is about Uddhava. Yes, Uddhava is in Dasyaras. But his Dasyaras is packaged together with some Sakya. That means his Dasya. So when he comes to Vrindavan, that pranay comes out. So he's in the Sakyarasa feature of his Sankul Bhav, his combined Bhav. So he's basically Sankul Bhav is a Bhav where different Bhavas are combined together. The devotee is defined by the prominent one. So he's prominent because he's a resident of Mathura and Dwarka, prominent in terms of Dasya. But he does have access to Vrindavan by Krishna's order, and there that Sakya arises. So in the context of speaking, he's able to taste the full measure of his prospect in terms of Sakya also. Uddhavaji Vijay. Anything else? Okay, Gita Jayanti ki jai, Govinda ki jai, Kadasi Bharta ki jai, Gaur Premanandi.
Srila Guru Maharaj ki jai.